Welcome to Fish Biz, the business of fishing podcast. Keith Allen and Brad Nickel from Mark V Strategies, with the only podcast on the internet that we know of that has nothing to do with fishing and actually catching fish, and everything to do with growing your business in the recreational sport fishing industry. Today, we're going to key in on a topic that is pretty timely at this stage. As promised, we're diving into trade shows. We will be pretty ICAST centric in this episode since it's coming up and bearing down on us this summer. But the strategies that we're going to discuss, the insights that we share, are things that you'll be able to apply to a variety of applications with the variety of trade shows. And Brad, we should get into the fact and kind of lead off with the fact that there are a number of different types of trade shows that you're going to find yourself with opportunities to engage in through the course of each season, and you have to pick out which ones make the most sense for you and your brand.
Sure, absolutely. I mean, you've got trade shows and you've got consumer shows, right? And then within the trade show spectrum, you've got shows as a manufacturer or a seller, where retailers, dealers are going to be there purchasing and looking for products in stock. And then you've got consumer shows where consumers can buy directly from you. And then below those subdivisions are things like freshwater versus saltwater and a plethora of other options. So,
right. Another I guess, key family of shows in there, the subcategories, if you will, is going to be distributor shows. Okay, yes. So there's the large industry, overall industry shows like ICAST, and then there's the individual distributor shows, some large, some small, that are the individual regional or even national distributors who are holding shows for their vendors, being the manufacturers, and for their retail partners, their wholesale partners, if you will, that are their brick and mortar stores. So those can be important for you as well, and they can be very valuable, but some more valuable than others. There's a cost associated with each one of these, and you have to evaluate the expense versus the reward of going to each one.
Other thing to factor into your thinking here is, if you're meeting directly with a dealer at a show like ICAST, there's an opportunity for you to be selling at wholesale to that dealer. Whereas at a distributor show, you get a much faster distribution channel because distributors already have relationships and are selling product to them, but you are going to be selling product at less than wholesale. So those are a factor to consider into how much budget do I have to go to trade shows throughout the year, and incorporating all the other costs that we're going to talk about. So,
right. We'll discuss those shows. We'll discuss the consumer shows. And their consumer shows come in all shapes and sizes, from the Miami International Boat Show, which is huge for the boating industry. And over the years, and gosh, I've been going to that show since I was a kid, right? And it used to be very tackle centric as well. Over the years, it has evolved into a much larger boat event than it has tackle event. So there's still a place for those things, but you have to weigh, whether or not that makes sense for you. There's thousands and thousands upon thousands of regional sportsman shows, consumer shows, some small, some large, different price points for being a part of each one. And you want to kind of evaluate the price of being there, what it's going to cost you to be there, how many people are coming to that thing, how much product do you need to sell to recoup your expenses, and what kind of exposure are you going to get versus a industry type trade show like ICAST, for example, where you're reaching the industry, you're reaching dealers, you're reaching distributors, you're reaching industry insiders, you're reaching media. Again, there's an expense with going there. You may or may not walk out of there with orders that covered the cost of going to the show. However, the relationships that you build, the lifetime value of any orders that you do get, can certainly exceed and justify the value of going to a show like that. Of course, ICAST, considered the recreational sport fishing industry's largest industry show, There's a fly fishing industry component. There's a marine manufacturers industry association component, and literally all of the noteworthy and leading media outlets are heavy in attendance, looking to find out what the new hot products are for the upcoming season.
Right.
It's an important place to be, even if you're not there to and not ready to present and have a booth. If you are planning on getting your product to the next level, getting your brand to the next level, and trying to grow to a point where you're in these tackle stores and tackle shops around the country, or even into a Bass Pro Shops or a Walmart, if that's the route you want to go, you need to go to this event. You need to experience it. And I suggest going before you display, right? And understand, because it can be extremely overwhelming. There's a lot to see.
Get an education.
Right. It's a tremendous networking event, and you will learn a lot just by being there. You will meet people who are going to help you just by being there, from
Go ahead.
from other manufacturers and industry leaders to media and journalists to pro anglers and people who may be interested in working with you on product development or R&D, or just helping you get the word out through social media. So definitely worth making a trip to ICAST. Typically happens in the summer in Orlando, Florida. We'll be there in July again this year. Looking forward to it. It's an event that we have I've been going to for years and years and years, and now that Brad and I have been working together for the past few years, Brad's been to, I think this will be your third one, and it has really proven to be an important event for our clients.
That's absolutely true. Wanted to check back real quickly to the consumer shows, because we ran into a company at the Miami Boat Show, softcoolers.com. I think they're called Horizons America, who actually has spent, what do you think, 20, 25 years. That company has been entirely based on living in an RV and on planes, going to consumer shows all over the country and selling their product. Haven't tried to be in dealers, haven't tried to be in stores. They finally have a website, softcoolers.com. Good guys, have built an incredibly successful company and done a great job selling product.
And so I was going to say, this is a family-owned business, right? And so it's kind of now evolving through the generations. And the fact that this model has worked for them now for 25 years and is starting to evolve into the digital domain as well is a testament to what they're doing. There are, listen, there's more ways to skin a cat, right? And so the old model, we all know what the old model was. You try and get into as many tackle shops as you can. You try and get into Bass Pro Shops, and you try and get into Gander Mountain, and you try and get into Dick's Sporting Goods. And Walmart obviously is huge, comes with its own set of circumstances, which again is for another show. But the old model was to see how many stores you can get in and distribute that way. As technology and the internet has evolved, anglers and consumers are shopping online more and more. So the digital domain and the direct customer relationship is becoming something that's also very important and very viable. And of course, the trade show model, the direct sell through trade shows and consumer shows, is something that does work for a lot of brands. The cooler company that you're mentioning, if you think of brands like Cutco, which is kind of a household name in cutlery, that is a monster company, and that is the only way they sell their products. Right.
Demonstrations, letting people see it, touch it, feel it. And, you've ever dreamed of traveling the country in an RV with your family, there's your opportunity. But again, that's a hard thing to do, and we should probably get back to the topic of the show.
It's good for a single man, right?
Which he was. He's the young guy who's taken over the business, and his uncle used to run it. Now he does, and he was 22, 23 years old, hopping around the country, having a good time.
Yeah, he had a smile on his face and a sparkle in his eye. I think he was he was enjoying enjoying his work for sure.
And it's a cash business.
Yeah, exactly. So, we'll discuss those types of business models in a future event. I think that's a good topic for us to harp on, and maybe we'll get him as a guest and get his perspective on it. But to stay focused on the topic at hand here is getting ready for trade shows. A lot of components go into this, right? So let's assume we're talking ICAST here, right? So at this stage, if you're displaying at ICAST, if you're going to have a booth, you're already registered, right? That deadline has probably already come and gone. And if it hasn't, depending on when you're listening to this podcast, it's something you need to be mindful of for the upcoming seasons. And booth selection at ICAST, this isn't the same at all shows. Booth selection at ICAST in particular comes down to a first come, first serve basis. So if you've been to the show and you know you're going to be there the following year, it's in your best interest to make your booth selection as soon as they offer that, which is really shortly after the event. So if you know you're coming back, go ahead and get that prime real estate and kind of scope out the venue and get an idea of where the high traffic areas are. A lot of times,
where are people walking? Where are they going? Yeah.
Right. So there's a couple of things you can key on here. The areas of entrance and egress, obviously traffic, areas around concessions and bathrooms coming and going. You see a lot of traffic. We had an event last year and we were kind of positioned in a major thoroughfare near the key dining area for lunch. And we had a steady stream. We also, of course, had a great product that was attracting people, but we were able to snag people out of the aisles because we had a high visibility position. So that's the first thing. Look for visibility. You want to be on the highest traffic area that you can. And often, if as you're kind of narrowing down your choices and evaluating what your options are, look for brands that you know are going to have high traffic, right? If you know a big monster brand is always coming out with something new, or you got wind that they're going to bring something big on next year, you might want to be across the aisle from them, or at least on the same aisle as them, so you're getting traffic. If you can be where two aisles intersect, that obviously same traffic patterns you look at on the street, right? The stuff you try and avoid on the street, well, that's what you want in a trade show. You want the highest traffic areas you can get to.
Location. And you've really covered all of it there, I think, making sure that you're going to be where people are going. And potentially thinking about, if the organizers publish where other exhibitors already are, as strange as this may seem, you may want to be close to your competitors, right? If people are looking in a particular area for a particular product type, it makes sense to be near them and give them an option, right? So if you've got a similar product to a bigger player or any player, you may want to be looking, because those people are going to be headed to a big brand booth to see what's coming out. And so if you're a smaller guy who's just getting started or just doesn't have the presence that they have, if you're near them, you've got the chance to catch their attention and give them a perspective on your product versus the competitors.
Right. And the ASA, who runs and manages ICAST, does a great job of publishing a site map, and they update it periodically as more manufacturers make their booth selections. They update it so you have an idea of how the venue is shaping up and can make your selection accordingly. So we're talking trade shows and location, but Brad, let's talk size. In trade shows, does the size of your booth matter? Does size matter?
I mean, it does matter, but people at a big trade show like ICAST, right? The bigger brands are going to have a 20 by 20 booth or a 30 by 30 booth, but the standard booth size is 10 foot by 10 foot. And that will usually suffice for, you launching a single product or a couple of products at that show. When you start to get some scale and you start to grow your business, the larger the booth, the more established you look, the more credible you look, and the more people are going to think that, you're a brand that's going to be there for a while and you're doing well.
And here's a little side note to that will kind of also reference back to what we were just discussing about location. Sometimes, depending on position, like, for example, at the end of an aisle, if you increase the size of your booth from a 10 by 10 to say a 20 by 10, you can now have 2 corners.
Yeah.
And get traffic coming from 2 or even 3 aisles. You're now like a peninsula. And so that can be a very valuable position that if you have the cash to do it, and a great booth design to fill it, that can really be advantageous.
Yeah, and that's a real critical thing, what you just talked about, right? The design to fill it. It is absolutely critical that if you're going to have a 20 by 10 or a 20 by 20 booth, that it doesn't look like, 3 packs of product over here and 4 packs of product over here and a big table on the top. And it doesn't look like it was designed to fill that space. And that's really an important thing to factor in.
Okay, so let's elaborate on design a little bit. In a typical situation at most trade shows, they're going to give you a printed cardboard sign with your company name on it and your booth number, and it's going to be hanging on that, on that pipe and drape when you get there, so you know where your booth is. And if you choose to use that as your signage, it may stay up regardless, but so people can locate booth numbers, but don't exactly. Don't. Right. There's no, Please. All it has is your name. You might as well type it out on a piece of paper, right? There's no branding. Do it with
crayon.
There's no brand, right? Having your kids do it with crayon would actually at least lend some style to it.
Yes.
But you need some branding here. This is not just like, hey, should I do something? No, this is critical. This is where your brand image shines in front of the people that are going to help you grow your brand. So, do you want to be considered the brand that has the pipe and drape backdrop? And it's brand XYZ, but there's no image or identity associated with that. It's just you standing there in your hopefully logoed or branded shirt and your products. You need to make sure that your branding stands out. Not that it just exists, but it pops. Yep. It pops when somebody walks by and they can see it. And in fact, the further away they can see it from, the better.
That's right. And, listen, if you haven't already watched our podcast about branding and logo design, after you finish this one, go back to it, because we touch a lot on colors and standing out and consistency and quality that are going to be really critical but that you need to do, the steps you need to do before you decide what your booth's going to look like at a trade show. And this is an absolutely critical process. Don't go to the show if you can't look good at the show. That doesn't mean you have to spend $40,000 to have a good looking booth, but it does mean you've got to think about it and it's got to fit your brand image. And you need to stand out because people are trying to avoid you when they go down the aisle, right? They've got a mission. They want to go somewhere. They're not looking. They got the blinders on. If I look at them, they won't see me and they won't try to grab me and get my attention. So you want something that's going to stand out, get their attention, make a claim, and something that they think they can sell in their store at a show like ICAST, right? That's your goal. What is the buyer goal?
Especially if you are a new brand. Especially if you're launching your brand or you're now taking your brand from the kitchen table to try and take it to the next level.
That's right.
You get how many times to make a first impression, Brad?
One shot, man.
Do it. If you're not ready, it's okay. Don't go. Yeah, wait until you're ready. Position yourself right. It's called strategic planning. Make a plan and execute that plan. Do not go until you are ready.
There is one other option, and that is to minimize how much you have to spend and how much work you have to put on it, and work with a partner of some kind that's going to have a booth that'll give you a share of their booth and let you show their product. Now, that's a biz dev and partnering strategy topic that we can get into a little more in depth later on, but that's an option.
And not all trade shows will let you do that.
That's true. That's very true.
So some will not. And a good relationship in that regard is often, for example, the Miami Boat Show was a great example. There were some retailers who brought in key products. They didn't bring in their whole store. They brought in key products, key brands, right? So if you already have a relationship with a retailer, perhaps you can co-opt the booth space with that with that company and lend some support, maybe offer him some show specials. And at that point, you're both offsetting the cost, your expense of going to the show. You're lending him support. He's lending you support. It's a win-win.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's a great strategy if you can pull it off. But at the end of the day, you really need to have a presence, and you need to be standing on your own at some point. And if you're making a decision about iCast, and you don't feel like you can get that ready in time, and you may not have the budget for it, or whatever the reason may be, get a ticket, get a hotel room, go there, and look at what everybody else does, right? As you go down the aisles, think about what things are standing out for you, what things look the most professional, what brands would you want to bet your store on if you owned a store? What brands are really making the benefits and the point of their product and doing a good job of selling it? Because that's a great way to learn how to do yours.
Right. So, most of us, especially who are, fishing enthusiasts, go to a show like that and we're looking for the products. What products are catching our attention, right? We all have that. It's in us because we're junkies for the gear, right? But go with a little bit different mindset. Yes, you want to scope out the gear because that's what you do, but go with an eye on the brands. Look at the branding. See what catches your attention brand-wise and booth-wise, right? Look at the practices that you see happening, right? There's monster brands that have 5, 6, 17 sub-brands under their umbrella, and they take up a third of the venue, right? You're not there yet. You can see some of the things that they do, that appeal to you, but you can also look at the small brands and listen. Every time you and I go, we look for brands who are, and often we're looking for young ones who are making an impact with their booth, with their design. That's what catches our attention before the product does, right?
That's right.
If the branding is not there, if the design and the professionalism isn't there, you've got your work cut out for you, right?
What's the brand that had the truck in their booth that first year before last?
Doomsday Tackle, and
Tackle.
They started.
That's a company that knows how to brand themselves, man.
They sure do. And you know what? We should have Will on an episode one day. I saw him at a show not too long ago, and he's doing it by himself. This is one guy, man. He is building this brand by himself. He's got a little bit of support behind him, but he is doing it as a one-man army, essentially. And he started literally with one soft plastic product. He now has a line of soft plastics. He has an award-winning line of rods. Oh, by the way, set your cell phones to stun. Sorry, folks, I'll be calling you back. Right. So this is a guy who started with some industry knowledge and experience, who launched a brand, had a phenomenal booth, and it wasn't a 10 by 10. I think it was more like a 10 by 30, right? He had a great looking booth, great design, and started with literally one soft plastic product, and he is scaling it at his own pace, but he's got a strategy. He's got a plan, and he's focused on that strategy, and so far it seems to be working for him. He's getting some good distribution.
And I want to go back to what he did at the iCast with his first launch of that one product, right? Here he is with a bigger size booth, and he's got one product. I think it was a 10 by 20. How do you fill that space, have a brand presence when you got one product with like 3 color variations? Well, he did something that no first timer would ever expect to be able to do. He brought in a truck.
An old truck.
An old truck. He probably bought it, at a salvage yard, and it was rusted out, still in good shape, filled the bed of this thing with his product, and created a brand and a style that matched his logo and identity, and made everybody go by, stop, and say, what the heck is this guy doing? Right? And you would never think, most people for the first time would think, wait a minute, I can't bring a truck into this fancy show. Well, you can, and you can bring almost anything you want in as long as it's not dangerous, and change the perceptions of what a booth should be. So instead of a pop-up backdrop for his young company, which is fine, those work great, we can talk about that. He made a presence and an impact, and people stopped and wanted to talk to him. And his branding looks good.
His branding looks good. Well, his brand is Doomsday Tackle, and I saw him at a show earlier, or actually late last year, and he didn't have the truck, but what he had was old Israeli missiles and ammo cases. Set up his display. Man, it was nice. Killer. So his branding is spot on. We'll definitely reach out to Will and see if we can get him on the show. But yeah, no, he really caught our attention. He caught a lot of people's attention. Yeah. And his products look great and work well. And so he's getting some traction, and he is organically growing his business. Yeah.
And he realized that you got that one chance to get that buyer's attention, and you got that one chance to make them think, wow, this guy's really legit, right? I know he's going to be around. I know he's going to market his product and get consumers into my store to buy the product and asking for the product. And that's what it takes at these shows. You have to have credibility, you have to have good branding, and you have to stand out. And it's not easy to do when you're amongst hundreds of booths. And so that's a really important factor to consider. And I don't know if we want to move into now kind of what your options are for a booth, limited budget, medium budget.
Sure. There are a range of options that go from really turnkey solutions. You can find them on the internet, and if you're watching the video version of this, we'll post them in the description below. Otherwise, if you're listening to the audio version of this, is mark5strategies.com. We'll include some links in the description on the
right.
webpage under the podcast, right? So we'll key in on some of those resources, but you can find them on the internet with a search for trade show booths, from just kind of silk screened backdrops with your branding or imaging, or really any kind of digital image that you want, to video displays and all sorts of portable ones that you can travel with that fit into travel cases and are easy to ship around, to large, customized, huge displays that you need to contract. And we have some great resources for those as well that we've worked with over the years. So we'll include some of those links in the description below. Ultimately, when you're coming up with your design, obviously budget has a lot to do with it. Yeah. If it's something that you want to use for multiple trade shows, then you need to probably find something that's a little more portable, easy to ship. If you are trying to do it all yourself, or maybe one or two guys or girls, then you want to consider the ease or difficulty of setting it up and tearing it down. And to that regard, certain shows and certain venues require you to use the facilities, union staff, union team. So all those things are going to weigh in to what you are doing, right? So
and a lot of facilities you should expect, the larger facilities like Orlando Convention Center, those kinds of places, you should expect to at least pay union level hourly rates to get your product, your booth from the dock to your booth. Now, if you have, in most of these places, if you've got a pop-up booth that you've bought and it rolls in a container on wheels, and you can do that yourself, you may not have to pay that labor charge. But do know that if you're investing any effort, another factor there is how much is it going to cost me to get the booth to the booth, right? The materials to the booth.
If you are shipping it, right, then you want to consider where and when it needs to be delivered.
Yep.
So that you can minimize the amount of times and the amount of hands it has to go through, right, to minimize your freight expenses on getting your trade show booths in and out of the locations you need them in. So all those things need to be factored.
Yeah. When you sign up for a trade show, most of the big management companies and associations like the ASA, they're going to send you, 30 pages of PDFs, right? And those are not just PDFs that you're just signing off on or that are for applications or anything else. There are detailed, step-by-step, overwhelming directions for what you need to do, right? And Keith brings up a good point, is that you have to think about the dates that things have to arrive, how you're going to get them there. You have to think about when the setup time is for the booth. You need to know the schedule of the booth. All of those things can be really complex. Also, in those documents you're going to get are things that are going to start ratcheting up your cost, right? So do I need an internet connection in the booth? Well, thankfully in the fishing industry, we don't always necessarily need, we're not selling a technology product, so we don't necessarily need an internet connection, but we're going to need lights. We're going to need electricity into the booth. Are we going to we're going to rent the little machine that lets me scan people's badges and have it dump into a database so I know everybody I talk to and I don't have to write it out? Yes, absolutely.
Get it, right? Let me tell you, that's an expense, but that is one of the most valuable tools.
That's right.
I think that we've used. You're going to pay a couple $100 for that scanner, right? But here's what happens. It has every registered attendee in it, and you scan the badge, and you have now, boom, exchange information. There's no, listen, you're going to get the business card too, but you don't have to then go kind of organize your business cards. You can make notes right in there, go back to your hotel room at night, make notes relevant to your discussion with that individual, but you now have a database that you're collecting, and you can scan badges in literally a second.
Yeah, and here's the other thing. If there's only 2 or 3 of you, and you're a hit, and you've done what you need to do to get people to your booth, when you have a line of 10 people wanting to talk to you, or 15 or 20 people wanting to talk to you, and you're getting business cards and people are asking you questions and they're telling you their story and how much they want and what their questions are, guess what? If you're writing out stuff about them and trying to record it all, you're not going to remember it at the end of the day, and it's going to be chaos, and somebody else is going to be waiting and getting pissed off. Scan that badge, spend the money. That scanning of that badge could save you a $5,000 deal because you're going to remember to get back to that person.
Listen, literally every second is not every minute. If you're a hit, every second is valuable. Okay, right. We've all been in situations in trade shows where it's like, man, when are they coming? Where are the people? You're standing there, you're wearing a path in the carpet, and then hopefully, if you've ever experienced a trade show, you've been in a situation where it's, it's banging. Let me tell you, when it's banging, you don't want to miss a conversation. You don't want to miss an opportunity to be in front of somebody, because you never know if the person in front of you is an independent dealer, if it's a journalist, if it's a large distributor. You need to cater to each of them. Now, with that said, you're also going to get a lot of tire kickers come around, right? You're going to get a lot of independent, journalists with small websites come around, which is all great, right? You want to be able to deliver something to all of them, because at the end of the day, that's going to help your brand. But you have to, at that point, start to evaluate the value of each conversation that you're dealing with, right? And like at ICAST, I have to say the ASA does a wonderful job. They color code the badges so that if the person you're talking to is a dealer or a distributor or media, just by looking at, just before you even read their badge, just by the color, right? And so, you can find yourself in a situation, and of course, you're probably going to have friends and colleagues come by and want to spend a few minutes with you and visit, because they're great networking events. All of those things are important to do, and you want to do as much of it as you can. However, you don't want to spend 15 minutes talking to a buddy when you have a dealer or a distributor or a journalist waiting.
This is about selling product. You are spending hundreds and thousands of dollars to sell your product. Your buddies can wait. Be a machine, man. Have everything ready and in place. Have all the materials you need. Have your price sheets, your sales sheets. Have everything hammered out. Don't have any questions left open, and make sure that you can give materials to people if the rush is so bad you can't get to them. Ask them to come back in 20 minutes when the rush is over. whatever it is. But don't spend your time networking when you have a crowd. Network when you don't have a crowd, or better yet, leave your booth in capable hands of other people on your team that know the product, and then go network outside of your booth, because
right.
At the end of the day, that makes a difference. Now, if your booth is dead, call all your buddies and get them into your booth, because
right.
when people
create a crowd.
When people see a crowd, I've always advocated just hire people that act like they're buyers. I know that sounds horrible, but the bottom line is, if there's a group of people in your booth, people are going to wonder, because we are social animals. And this goes back to I always harp on the psychology of buying. We see other people doing it, and social validation says there must be something good here if there's other people here. And that's a great way to get people to stop and see what's going on.
I think we could go on for a while and get into deeper detail on a lot of the topics we covered here relative to trade shows. We'll drill down on it a little bit more on the website, so you can find some additional content there at mark5strategies.com. If you are enjoying the audio version of this, you should know that there's also a video version of the Fish Biz podcast. If you have been watching the video version and not enjoying the look of Brad and I, we welcome you to download and subscribe. The audio version available on iTunes and your wherever you shop for podcasts, your finer podcast dealers.
It's a good thing we didn't have to sell that to them.
Yeah. Hey, we've got a lot more to cover on the topic of trade shows. This is a multi-part series. How many parts? Well, not real sure yet, because it keeps evolving. We keep finding some great topics and drilling down deep into them to help you better prepare and be the most effective at the upcoming events. They're important to your business. They're vital to your business, and we're hoping we're giving you some advice and some direction that's helping you out. If you are enjoying the podcast, we hope you'll make a comment down below and let us know. If you have questions or comments, please feel free to make them in the comment section below, and Brad and I will join you in the conversation there. Please subscribe to the Fish Biz podcast. The Business of Fishing podcast is happening week after week. We've got a lot more to share with you, and we hope that you will become a subscriber and a fan and a follower and share them with your friends in the industry as well. For Brad Nickel, I'm Keith Allen from Mark 5 Strategies. Thanks for joining us. More to come on Fish Biz, the Business of Fishing podcast. Now do the dance, Brad. Say goodbye.
Bye.
Oh God, you look like the gopher in Caddyshack.
I'm the white German guy. I don't dance.